your very presence sent people fleeing in terror. Not because of who you are, but because of the scent that clings to your skin like a curse. This is the life of Princess Nala of Lantoro Kingdom, the royal outcast whose unbearable odor turned her name into a whisper of fear. But what if I told you, her curse was never hers to bear? That the stench that cleared rooms and silenced conversations was masking something far darker, a secret woven into the very fabric of the kingdom. Beneath the surface of rejection lies a labyrinth of betrayal, dark sorcery, and forbidden pacts that threaten to unravel everything. And when Nala discovers the truth, it won't just change her fate, it will shatter the destiny of Lantoro itself. Because the curse was meant for someone else, someone far more powerful. And the day she finds out who, the kingdom will burn. The real question is, will she survive long enough to reveal it? Samubaba Tales present, Nala, the strong body odor princess no man wanted to marry. The kingdom of Lantoro was known for its beautiful landscapes and graceful women. Yet, among its many beauties was Nala, a princess like no other. She had smooth, dark skin that shimmered under the sun and eyes that sparkled like polished onyx. But Nala had a problem, a terrible, unexplainable body odor that clung to her like a shadow. It started when she was a baby. Her mother, Queen Adeshewa, would bathe her in scented oils and dress her in the finest silks, yet the smell would creep back within hours. The royal healers were summoned. They chanted incantations, burned herbs, and rubbed her skin with rare ointments. Nothing worked. As Nala grew, the odor grew stronger. By the time she reached 18, it was unbearable. Her father, King Olumide, had grown desperate. He called upon herbalists, sorcerers, and even travelers from distant lands, but none could break the curse. Whispers began to spread through the village. A witcher's child, some would say. She is cursed by the gods, others would whisper. It didn't help that Nala's mother had struggled for years to conceive before finally giving birth under mysterious circumstances. Some swore they saw Queen Adeshewa leaving the palace late at night, disappearing into the depths of the forest. But despite the whispers, King Olumide was determined to find his daughter a suitor. He declared a grand ceremony and invited the most eligible men from across the kingdom. Warriors, scholars, princes, they all came, lured by the promise of power and wealth. When Nala appeared at the grand hall, dressed in a stunning gold gown, her beauty stunned them all. But the moment she approached, the suitors covered their noses, their eyes watering. Some turned and left immediately. Others tried to endure it out of respect for the king, but their faces twisted with discomfort. Nala's heart shattered. She knew what they thought, what they smelled. The whispers grew louder. How can such beauty carry such a curse? The king, humiliated, sent everyone away. The doors slammed shut, and for days, the kingdom fell silent. Nala locked herself in her chambers, refusing to eat or speak. Her mother tried to comfort her, but even she had to step back when the stench grew too strong. But there was one person who did not leave, an old woman named Iyaseke. She appeared at the palace gates one rainy evening, her back bent with age, her eyes milky with blindness. The guards would not let her pass, but she whispered something to them, something that made their eyes widen in shock. Moments later, she was standing before the king and queen, her gaze fixed on Nala. "I know the cause," she croaked, her voice like brittle leaves crunching underfoot. "And I know who placed it." Nala's eyes shot up, her heart pounding. "Who?" she whispered. Iyaseke stepped forward, her fingers curled with age. "It was promised," she murmured, "long before you were born." The room fell silent. Nala looked at her parents, their faces drained of color. "Promised? What do you mean?" The old woman smiled, her teeth blackened and chipped. "A life for a life. The queen made a deal with something dark. She promised her firstborn in exchange for fertility. But she did not know the price would be a curse." Queen Adeshewa staggered back, clutching her chest. "You lie!" she screamed, her voice cracking with fear. I did no such thing. Iyaseke's eyes glowed with an unnatural light. Deny it all you want, but the deal was struck. And now, the spirit comes to claim what is owed. Nala's heart pounded. Clem? What does she want from me? The old woman leaned in closer, her breath hot and foul. To take you back, to where you were promised. A chill swept through the room. The shadows grew longer, stretching and calling like blackened fingers. Nala's breath caught in her throat. Where is that? She whispered. Iyaseke's eyes gleamed. The forest of the forgotten. The night before her departure, Nala couldn't sleep. Her room, usually lit with soft candlelight, felt darker. Shadows seemed to flicker and twist in ways she'd never noticed before. Outside her window, the moon hung low and full, casting an airy glow over the kingdom. Her father, King Olumide, had tried to refuse the old woman's warning, but Nala knew there was truth in her eyes. Iyaseke had given her a crude map, drawn with trembling hands, marking the path to the forest of the forgotten. You cannot go, Nala, her mother cried, gripping her shoulders tightly. We can find another way. We will summon the healers again, bring in priests from the east. Anything but this. Nala looked into her mother's tear-streaked eyes, and for a moment, she wanted to believe her. But the whispers, they had started the moment Iyaseke left. Soft, crawling voices in her mind, calling her name, urging her to come. It's the only way, Mama, she whispered, her voice steady. I have to know the truth. By dawn, Nala was on her way. The kingdom seemed to hold its breath as she left, villagers watching with fearful eyes as she mounted her horse and rode towards the eastern hills, where the forest of the forgotten waited. The air grew colder as she rode deeper into the forest. Thick vines hung from twisted branches, swaying as if moved by invisible hands. The path beneath her horse's hooves was rough and uneven, strewn with roots that seemed to call up from the ground like gnarled fingers. The whispers grew louder. They called her name, sometimes softly, sometimes with a jagged edge of desperation. Her heart thumped wildly, but she pressed on. Iyaseke had warned her, do not stop. No matter what you hear, no matter what you see. Hours passed, the sunlight above dimmed by the thick canopy of leaves. Shadows flitted at the edge of her vision, dark shapes that moved too quickly to be animals. Her skin prickled, and she fought the urge to look back. Suddenly, the path split into three. Nala pulled her horse to a stop, uncertainty flooding her. The map Iyaseke had given her was smudged, the ink faded with age. She squinted at the parchment, her hands shaking slightly. Take the path that whispers, she remembered the old woman saying. Nala closed her eyes and listened. At first, she heard nothing but the rustling of leaves. But then, it came. Soft, murmuring voices, like breathy sighs carried on the wind. They were coming from the middle path. Gripping the reins tighter, she nudged her horse forward, the whispers growing louder with each step. The path wound deeper into the heart of the forest, the air thick with moisture and the stench of decay. Trees loomed overhead, their branches arching like skeletal arms. At last, she reached a clearing, and there it stood, the Gate of Souls. It was an archway, ancient and crumbling, made from stones blackened with age. Symbols were etched into the surface, swirls and jagged lines that seemed to pulse with a dark light. The whispers rose to a fevered pitch, echoing off the stones and filling her ears. Nala dismounted her horse, her knees trembling as she approached the gate. She hesitated, her hands hovering just above the surface. The air grew colder, her breath coming out in misty puffs. She looked back at the path she had taken. Nothing but shadows stretched behind her. There was no going back. With a deep breath, she stepped through. The world shifted. The sky above turned gray and heavy, the trees twisted and bent at impossible angles. The ground beneath her feet was soft, almost spongy, like she was walking on old leaves and decaying roots. The whispers softened, replaced by something worse, soft weeping, drifting through the fog that clung to the ground like smoke. She moved forward, the air growing thicker with each step. Shapes moved in the mist, vague, transparent figures that watched her with hollow eyes. Nala's breath quickened, but she forced herself to keep going. In the center of the clearing, she saw it, a massive tree, its bark blackened and cracked. It pulsed with a dark energy, veins of shadow spreading from its roots. A woman stood beneath its branches, her back turned to Nala. Her hair was long and matted, her clothes tattered and old. Nala approached cautiously. "Hello," she called out, her voice shaking. The woman turned, and Nala gasped. Her face was beautiful, untouched by time, but her eyes were hollow, filled with endless darkness. "You have come," she whispered, her voice soft and echoing. "Who are you?" Nala asked, taking a cautious step back. The woman's smile was sharp and knowing. "I am your date," she replied, stepping forward. Her feet did not touch the ground. "I am the promise your mother made." Nala's heart thundered. "I don't understand." The woman raised a hand, and the shadows thickened around her. "Your mother came to me, desperate for a child. She gave me a promise, a life for a life. You were never meant to belong to her." Nala shook her head, stumbling backward. "No, my mother would never." "She did." The woman's eyes gleamed with sorrow and something darker. "And now, it is time for you to return. The odor is the mark of your binding. It draws you here, back to me." Nala's hands trembled. Her mother's late-night visits to the forest, the whispered prayers, the offerings left beneath the oldest tree. It was true, all of it. The woman raised her hand, and the air thickened, pressing against Nala's chest. "Come, child. It is time." Nala's body began to move, her legs heavy and slow. Shadows coiled around her ankles, crawling up her legs, pulling her closer. She tried to scream, but her voice was swallowed by the mist. The whispers returned, louder now, a chant that vibrated in her bones. The woman smiled, her eyes glimmering with satisfaction. "Welcome home." Nala took one final breath, her eyes locked with the shadowed woman, before the mist closed around her, pulling her beneath the roots of the great tree. The whispers faded, and silence returned to the forest. The of Lantoro was quiet after Nala disappeared. At first, whispers spread among the villagers. Some said she had run away in shame. Others believed she was taken by dark forces. But the king and queen knew the truth, even if they dared not speak it. King Olumide shut himself away in the palace, his once proud figure now hunched with the weight of grief and guilt. He barely spoke, his eyes hollow and distant. Queen Adeshewa, however, was restless. She would wake up screaming from nightmares, her hands clutching the sheets as if she could still feel the shadows creeping over her skin. The palace staff whispered of her midnight walks, of how she would wander the gardens alone, whispering Nala's name into the darkness. Some said she spoke to the trees, pleading with them to return her daughter. But the trees never answered. One evening, just as the sun dipped below the horizon, Iyaseke returned. She appeared at the palace gates without warning, her form hunched and shadowed beneath a dark cloak. The guards tried to turn her away, but her gaze, sharp and burning with ancient fire, made them step aside without another word. Queen Adeshewa was in the grand hall, her eyes fixed on the fire that crackled in the stone hearth. She turned sharply when the doors creaked open, her heart leaping into her throat. "Iyaseke," she whispered, her voice trembling. The old woman's eyes were unyielding. "You made a bargain," she said simply, her voice low and rough like leaves scraping stone. "You knew the price." Queen Adeshewa staggered back, clutching the edge of her chair. "I didn't know, not like this. She's my daughter. She was never meant to be yours," Iyaseke replied, stepping forward. Her cane struck the marble floor with a hollow thud. The curse was always there. The odor, a reminder, a mark of the death unpaid. The queen fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. "Please, I beg you. Tell me how to get her back. Tell me what I must do." Iyaseke paused, her gaze softening just a fraction. The curse binds her to the forest of the forgotten. The one who owns her soul resides there. A spirit older than this kingdom, bound to the earth and shadow. Queen Adeshewa's hands trembled. Is there a way? The old woman nodded slowly. There is always a way. But it requires a price, a life for a life. To break the bond, you must replace her with another soul, willingly given. The queen's heart twisted painfully. Who? She whispered. Iyaseke leaned in, her breath whispering like dead leaves. The one who sealed the pact. The one who asked for her in the first place. Queen Adeshewa's eyes widened, her hand flying to her mouth. Me? The old woman nodded. Blood for blood. Only then will she be free. That night, the queen made her decision. She dressed in white, the traditional garb of sacrifice, and walked barefoot to the edge of the palace grounds. Iyaseke waited for her, a bundle of herbs and a small blade resting in her hands. Together, they walked silently to the edge of the forest. Fog clung to the ground, swirling around their ankles as they moved deeper into the shadows. The path was familiar to the queen. She had walked it many times in secret, whispering her desires into the bark of old trees, leaving offerings beneath the twisted roots. At last, they reached the clearing where the great blackened tree stood. Its branches loomed overhead, casting long, jagged shadows across the ground. Iyaseke moved forward, sprinkling herbs in a cycle around the queen, her hands steady despite her age. Speak her name, Iyaseke instructed. Queen Adeshewa swallowed, her throat dry. Nala, she whispered. Her voice cracked, the weight of her guilt crashing over her. Nala, my child. The ground trembled. Shadows slithered across the surface, pulling at the queen's feet. The whispers returned, louder now, their voices echoing off the trees. Nala, Nala, Nala. The queen looked up, her breath hitching in her chest. There, beneath the twisted roots, a shape began to form. Dark and translucent at first, but slowly solidifying. Nala stood before her eyes wide and empty, her skin pale and stretched thin. Mother, Nala's voice was soft, echoing like a distant dream. You came for me? Queen Adeshewa choked back a sob. Yes, my darling. I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. Iyaseke stepped forward, the blade glinting in her hand. Do you understand what must be done? The queen nodded, her eyes never leaving her daughter's face. I do. Without hesitation, she reached for the blade, her hand steady despite the tears streaming down her face. She pressed the blade to her palm and dragged it across her skin, the blood pooling and dripping to the ground. The shadows responded instantly, swirling around her feet, pulling her deeper into the cycle. Nala watched, her eyes wide, her hands reaching out. Mama, no! Queen Adeshewa smiled through her tears, her voice soft and loving. You will leave, my child. You will leave. The ground opened beneath her, shadows wrapping around her body, pulling her into the earth. Nala screamed, rushing forward, but her hands passed through her mother's fading form. The whispers grew louder, a chant that filled the air with ancient, powerful energy. And then, silence. The shadows disappeared, the fog lifted, and the forest stilled. Nala collapsed to her knees, the lingering scent of her mother's perfume still clinging to the air. Iyaseke watched with heavy eyes, her cane tapping the ground softly. It is done, she murmured. The debt is paid. Nala looked up, her eyes clear and bright, her skin no longer pale. The odor that had plagued her since birth was gone. She stood, her heart aching with loss but burning with a new strength. I will honor her sacrifice, she whispered, her voice steady. I will make her proud. Iyaseke nodded, her eyes glimmering with pride. The curse has been broken. Your destiny is your own now, Nala. Go, live the life she gave you. The sun rose over Lantoro Kingdom, casting long shadows over the cobblestone paths and gilded rooftops. Morning traders bustled through the market, their shouts mingling with the calls of birds perched on the high walls of the palace. It seemed like any other day, but whispers traveled quickly. Whispers of a young woman seen walking through the forest of the forgotten, her head held high, her eyes bright with determination. Nala had returned. Her footsteps were steady as she crossed the wooden bridge that led to the palace gates. Villagers paused, their baskets of goods clutched tightly to their chests as they watched her pass. Some murmured prayers, others gasped, clutching their children close. They remembered her, the girl with the odor that sent suitors running. But now, she was different. Her skin glowed like morning light, her hair flowed down her back, and the scent that surrounded her was sweet and pure, like wild jasmine after the rain. Nala ignored the stairs, her eyes fixed on the towering palace. She had come to reclaim her life. The guards at the palace gates barely recognized her, but her eyes, those fierce, unyielding eyes, were unmistakable. They stepped aside as if compelled by an unseen force, and she walked through the grand doors without a single word. King Olumide sat upon his throne, his once powerful frame now withered with age and sorrow. His eyes, bloodshot and weary, flickered with disbelief as Nala entered the hall. He staggered to his feet, his voice trembling. "Nala." "Yes, father," she replied, her voice steady and sharp as a blade. "I am home." The court erupted into murmurs, nobles clutching their chests and whispering in disbelief. Some crossed themselves, fearing she was a spirit or an illusion. But Nala stood firm, her gaze never leaving her father's. King Olumide's knees shook, and he fell back onto his throne. "It's impossible. You were gone. You vanished." Nala stepped forward, her footsteps echoing in the vast hall. "You know why I vanished. You know what mother did. What you allowed her to do." Her words struck like iron, reverberating through the chamber. The king flinched, his eyes darting to the shadows. He swallowed hard, the truth clawing its way up his throat. "Your mother," he began, his voice cracking. "She did it to protect the kingdom." "No," Nala replied sharply. "She did it to protect you, from your greed, from the curse that you brought upon us. I know the truth now. I know what happened the night you begged Iyaseke for power and prosperity." The court gasped, their eyes wide with shock. King Olumide's hands clenched the arms of his throne. You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," Nala continued, her eyes blazing. "You wanted a son. You wanted an heir to cement your legacy. Iyaseke promised you prosperity but demanded something in return. When mother could not give you a son, you offered her instead. You promised your firstborn, me." The whispers grew louder, nobles exchanging frantic glances. King Olumide's face grew pale, sweat beading on his brow. "It was a mistake. I didn't know, not like this." Nala took another step forward. "But you did know, father. You knew when I was born, and you smelled that curse upon me. You knew when I was mocked and ridiculed. You knew when no man would take my hand in marriage, and you did nothing." The king bowed his head, his shoulders sagging with the weight of his guilt. "I was afraid," he whispered. "Afraid of losing everything." Nala's eyes softened, just a bit. "You lost everything anyway." She paused, her voice growing stronger. "But I have returned. I am free of the curse. Mother paid the price. She gave herself for me." King Olumide's eyes filled with tears, his hands trembling. "Your mother, she..." Nala nodded. "She broke the pact. I am free. But I did not come back for you." Her voice grew colder, sharper. "I came back for the people you abandoned. The kingdom you let rot while you wallowed in your own fear." The court was silent. Even the whispers died away as Nala stood before the throne. The people need a ruler who will stand for them, not hide behind bargains and curses. "I will take my mother's place as queen." The nobles gasped, but none dared object. Her presence was too powerful, her spirit too fierce. King Olumide looked up at his daughter, his eyes filled with a strange mixture of pride and sorrow. "You would make a fine queen," he murmured. Nala stepped back, raising her hands. "If the council agrees, I shall rule. But not with fear, not with curses, with justice. One by one, The nobles knelt before her, their heads bowed in respect. It was clear to everyone in that room, the old era had ended. A new dawn had risen, and with it, the reign of Queen Nala, the girl who overcame the curse that was meant to destroy her. A new era. Under Queen Nala's rule, Lantoro flourished. The kingdom, once shadowed by secrets and dark magic, became a beacon of prosperity. Nala, with Iyaseke as her trusted advisor, rooted out corruption and restored faith among the people. Her scent, once a source of shame and isolation, was now a symbol of her strength. She was known across the land as Nala the Jasmine Queen, and many traveled from distant kingdoms to witness the woman who defied fate. The palace gardens flourished under her touch, filled with sweet-smelling flowers that bloomed year-round. She opened the gates to the poor and the suffering, promising that her rule would never again be built on lies and betrayal. Nala married for love, not politics, and her children grew up knowing the true strength of their mother, a woman who rose from the ashes of a curse and built a legacy that would last for generations.